The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the Afghan night sky like a predator, its rotors chopping the thin mountain air. Inside the darkened cabin, 8 Navy SEALs sat in silence, each man lost in his own pre-mission ritual. Some checked their weapons for the 100th time. Others stared into the darkness beyond the open doors. One whispered a prayer. Commander Jake "Hawk" Harrison sat near the door, his weathered face illuminated by the green glow of his night vision goggles pushed up on his helmet. At 42, he was old for this work, but his eyes still held the sharp intensity that had earned him his call sign. He'd led SEAL Teams 7 through 43 missions in this God-forsaken country. 43 missions, and every single man had come home. Tonight would be number 44. 5 minutes, the crew chief shouted over the rotor noise, holding up his hand with fingers spread. Harrison nodded and keyed his radio. Check in. Davis, good to go, Lieutenant Marcus Davis responded immediately. At 28, Davis was the youngest officer on the team, but he'd proven himself in Ramadi and Helmand province. Harrison trusted him like a son. Rodriguez ready. Chief Petty Officer Carlos Rodriguez was the team's breacher, a bull of a man from San Diego who could kick through a brick wall. Bennett comms green. Their communications specialist tapped his radio pack twice for emphasis. Johnson locked. The team medic always calm, always ready. Williams set. Their explosives expert grinned in the darkness. Patterson ready to party. The youngest team member, just 24, still had that invincible attitude. Mitchell good. The quiet sniper who spoke more with his rifle than his mouth. Thompson ready to rock. The secondary breacher cracked his knuckles. Harrison allowed himself a thin smile. His team, his brothers. All right, listen up. Target is Khalid Ahmadi, high-value arms dealer supplying IEDs and weapons to 3 terrorist cells in the region. Intelligence says he's holed up in a compound 15 clicks east of here. We hit fast, we hit hard, we're gone before they know what happened. What's the guard situation? Davis asked, sliding closer. Intel suggests minimal, maybe 4 to 6 hostiles. Ahmadi doesn't like attention, keeps a small security detail. But stay frosty. Intel's been wrong before. Intel's wrong more often than my ex-wife, Rodriguez muttered, earning a few dark chuckles. 2 minutes, the crew chief announced. Harrison pulled his night vision goggles down over his eyes, and the world transformed into shades of green. The Hindu Kush mountains below looked like the surface of an alien planet, jagged, hostile, unforgiving. They'd swallowed countless warriors over thousands of years. Taliban, Soviets, British, Mujahideen. These mountains didn't care about flags or causes. They just killed. 30 seconds. The team stood as one, checking each other's gear with practiced efficiency. Harrison felt the familiar pre-mission cocktail of adrenaline and ice-cold focus flooding his system. This was what he was born to do. The helicopter flared suddenly, and the crew chief gave the signal. Go, go, go. The SEALs fast-roped down into the darkness, dropping 12 feet to the rocky ground. Within seconds, all 8 operators were on the ground, weapons up, scanning for threats. The Black Hawk banked hard and disappeared into the night, its sound fading to nothing. Silence descended over the mountains. Wind whispered through the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Harrison raised his fist, the signal to move. The team fell into formation automatically, years of training making them operate like a single organism. They moved through the mountain terrain with supernatural quiet, their boots finding purchase on loose stones without making a sound. 3 clicks to the target. 45 minutes of careful movement through hostile territory. The night was brutally cold. Harrison's breath formed clouds even through his face mask. The temperature had dropped to near freezing, and frost glittered on the rocks around them. Above, a million stars blazed in the unpolluted sky, the same stars that had watched over warriors in these mountains for millennia. Commander compound in sight. 200 meters. Mitchell whispered through the radio, his sniper scope giving him the best view. Harrison signaled the team to halt. They dropped into defensive positions, becoming invisible shadows among the rocks. He pulled out his binoculars and studied the target. The compound sat in a small valley, surrounded by high stone walls. A main building dominated the center, with several smaller structures around it. Dim light glowed from a few windows. Everything looked exactly like the satellite imagery and drone footage they'd studied. Too exactly. Harrison's instincts, honed by 20 years of combat, whispered a warning. Something felt wrong. The compound was too quiet. No guards visible on the walls, no movement in the courtyard, no cigarette glows from bored sentries. "Sir," Davis had crawled up beside him. "What do you think?" "I think it's too clean," Harrison said quietly. "Where are the guards?" Maybe Ahmadi really does keep a small detail. Maybe, but Harrison didn't believe it. He keyed his radio to command frequency. "Overwatch Hawk 1. Requesting updated intel on target compound, seeing no visible security, confirm target is present." Static crackled. Then, "Hawk 1 Overwatch. Thermal imaging confirms multiple heat signatures inside main building. Target is present. You are clear to proceed." Harrison wanted to abort. Every instinct screamed at him to pull back, to wait, to get better intelligence. But they'd been hunting Ahmadi for 3 months. This was their shot. If they waited, he'd disappear again. "All right," he said quietly. "We go, but stay sharp. Something doesn't feel right." The team moved forward, closing the distance to the compound walls. Rodriguez placed the breaching charge on the secondary entrance, a small wooden door in the north wall. Williams double-checked the connections. Bennett monitored radio frequencies for any sign they'd been detected. Nothing, silence, just the wind and their own controlled breathing. Harrison positioned the team on either side of the door. He caught Davis's eye and saw his own concern reflected there. But orders were orders. Ahmadi was inside. They had a job to do. He held up 3 fingers, 2, 1. Rodriguez triggered the charge. The door exploded inward in a shower of wood and smoke. The SEALs poured through the breach, weapons up, moving with lethal precision into the courtyard. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The courtyard was empty. No guards, no movement, just shadows and the settling dust from the breaching charge. Then Harrison saw it, the glint of metal in the window above. Not one position, dozens. "Ambush!" he screamed. The night erupted into hell. Muzzle flashes burst from every window, every rooftop, every doorway. It wasn't 4 to 6 guards. There were at least 40 Taliban fighters, and they'd been waiting. The entire compound was a kill box, and Harrison's team had walked right into it. The trap had been set, and they'd taken the bait. The compound courtyard transformed into a maelstrom of fire and death. Bullets cracked through the air like angry hornets, ricocheting off stone walls in orange sparks. RPG trails streaked across the darkness, their warheads detonating with bone-shaking explosions that showered the SEALs with debris and shrapnel. "Contact left, contact right, contact everywhere," Rodriguez screamed into his radio, his voice nearly drowned out by the cacophony of automatic weapons fire. Harrison's mind shifted into combat mode, time seeming to slow even as chaos erupted around him. He could see it now. The entire operation had been a setup from the beginning. The intelligence had been fed to them deliberately. Ahmadi wasn't here. This was a trap designed specifically to kill American Special Operations Forces. "Fall back to the breach point," Harrison ordered, his M4 carbine barking as he laid down, suppressing fire toward a window where muzzle flashes blazed. A Taliban fighter tumbled from the second story, his AK-47 clattering on the stones. Mitchell's sniper rifle boomed twice. 2 more hostiles dropped. "Commander, we've got fighters flanking from the east wall." "Williams, demo that position," Harrison commanded. The explosives expert pulled a grenade, armed it, and threw it with perfect precision. The explosion silenced the flanking machine gun, but 3 more opened up from different positions. The Taliban had set up interlocking fields of fire, professional, well planned. This wasn't a random ambush. This was a military operation. Thompson took a round to his body armor, the impact spinning him around. He stayed on his feet, returning fire. I'm good. But they weren't good. Harrison could see the tactical situation deteriorating by the second. His team was pinned down in the center of the courtyard with minimal cover. Taliban fighters held the high ground on all sides. The breach point they'd entered through was now a fatal funnel. Anyone who tried to exit would be cut down immediately. "Bennett, call for emergency extract," Harrison shouted. "Already on it, sir. QRF is 20 minutes out." 20 minutes? They'd all be dead in 5. An RPG streaked past Harrison's head, missing by inches, and exploded against the wall behind him. The concussive blast lifted him off his feet and slammed him into a stone pillar. His helmet cracked against the rock, stars exploding across his vision. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out all other sound. Through the ringing, he heard muffled voices. Davis was shouting something. Rodriguez was firing in controlled bursts. Johnson was dragging Patterson behind cover. The young SEAL was clutching his arm, blood streaming between his fingers. Harrison shook his head, trying to clear the fog. No time for being dazed. His men needed him. He brought his rifle up and acquired a target, a Taliban fighter with an RPG on the western rooftop. Harrison fired 3 rounds. The fighter collapsed backward, the RPG tube sliding off the edge and clattering into the courtyard. "We need to move now." Davis had crawled to Harrison's position, his face streaked with dirt and blood from a cut above his eye. "They're bringing up more reinforcements from the south." Harrison risked a glance over the pillar. His heart sank. At least a dozen more Taliban fighters were pouring into the compound through the main gate. They weren't just trying to kill the Americans, they wanted to capture them. Propaganda videos, public executions, the ultimate prize for any jihadist cell. "Listen up," Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "We're going to punch through the north wall. Rodriguez, breach it. Everyone else, lay down everything you've got on that rooftop position. On my mark." A burst of machine gun fire stitched across the courtyard. Harrison felt the first round slam into his left shoulder, spinning him around. The second hit his right thigh. White-hot pain exploded through his body as he collapsed behind the pillar. "Commanders hit, commanders down." Johnson was there instantly, his medic kit already open. His hands moved with practiced speed, applying pressure to the shoulder wound. "Entry and exit, shoulders through and through. Leg wound is bad, sir. Femoral might be nicked." Harrison gritted his teeth against the pain, tasting blood in his mouth. He must have bitten his tongue when he fell. "How bad?" "Bad enough. You need a hospital like yesterday." The wound in Harrison's thigh pumped blood with each heartbeat. Dark red. Arterial. Johnson was right. If the femoral artery was compromised, he had minutes before he bled out. Davis appeared, his face white with shock. "Sir, we need to get you out of here." "Negative." Harrison grabbed Davis's vest with his good hand, pulling him close. "You need to get the team out. That's an order, Lieutenant." "We're not leaving you." "Yes, you are." Harrison's voice was steel despite the pain. "Look at the tactical situation. If you try to carry me, we all die. If you move now, fast and light, you can make it to the extraction point." Another RPG exploded nearby. Mitchell was still firing, his sniper rifle picking off targets with mechanical precision. Williams and Thompson had formed a defensive line, their rifles creating a temporary bubble of cover. But it wouldn't last. "Sir, please," Davis's voice cracked. "Marcus." Harrison used his first name deliberately, his voice softer now. "You're a good officer, you're ready for command. Get our boys home, that's your mission now." Rodriguez had crawled over, his face twisted with anguish. "Commander, we don't leave men behind. Never." "You're not leaving me. I'm ordering you to execute a tactical withdrawal while I provide covering fire." Harrison released Davis and checked his rifle. 1 magazine left, maybe 30 rounds. Enough. He pulled himself up against the pillar, his wounded leg screaming in protest. The compound swam in his vision, but he forced himself to focus. "I'll hold this position for 3 minutes. That gives you time to reach the secondary extraction point. Bennett, you relay coordinates now." "But sir." "Now, Bennett." The communications specialist's voice shook as he radioed the new extraction coordinates to the incoming QRF. Harrison met each man's eyes in turn. Mitchell, Williams, Thompson, Johnson, Rodriguez, finally Davis. "It's been an honor serving with you, all of you. Now get the hell out of here. That's a direct order." Davis's jaw clenched. Tears streaked through the dirt on his face, but he nodded. "Yes, sir." He keyed his radio. "Team 7, tactical withdrawal on my mark. Head for secondary extract. Move fast, move quiet. 3, 2, 1, move." Harrison opened fire, his rifle spitting rounds at every muzzle flash he could see. The SEALs broke from cover, running for the eastern wall where Rodriguez had already blown a breach charge. They moved as a unit, covering each other, laying down suppressing fire as they went. Harrison's shoulder was on fire, his leg going numb from blood loss, but he kept shooting. He dropped 2 Taliban fighters trying to flank his team, 3 more who emerged from a doorway. His magazine ran dry. He reloaded, his last one, and continued firing. Through the smoke and chaos, he watched his team disappear through the breach in the east wall. Davis was the last one through, and he paused for just a moment, looking back. Harrison raised his hand in a final salute. Then Davis was gone. The compound fell into an eerie near silence. Harrison's ears still rang, but the overwhelming volume of gunfire had ceased. Taliban fighters emerged from their positions, weapons trained on him, 20 of them, maybe more. They approached cautiously, shouting at him in Pashto to drop his weapon. Harrison looked down at his rifle, empty. He'd bought his team the time they needed. He let the weapon fall from his hands. The last thing he saw before the rifle butt struck his head was the stars above, the same stars that had watched warriors die in these mountains for thousands of years. Then darkness claimed him, and Commander Jake "Hawk" Harrison's world went black. In the distance, the fatting sound of helicopter rotors carried his team toward safety. They had left their commander behind. The Black Hawk touched down at Bagram Airfield as dawn broke over the Afghan mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and purple. The 7 surviving members of SEAL Team 7 sat in the helicopter's cabin, silent as corpses. Not one of them had spoken during the 40-minute flight back to base. Patterson's wounded arm had been stabilized by Johnson, but the young SEAL stared at nothing, his eyes hollow. Mitchell still clutched his rifle, knuckles white. Rodriguez's massive frame was hunched over, his head in his hands. Thompson and Williams sat shoulder to shoulder, both men's faces carved from stone. Lieutenant Marcus Davis was the first to step off the helicopter. His legs nearly buckled when his boots hit the tarmac. He'd led men in combat before. He'd made hard decisions, but he'd never left a man behind. Never abandoned his commander to die alone in enemy territory. The guilt felt like a physical weight crushing his chest. "Lieutenant Davis." The voice belonged to Captain Morrison, the JSOC liaison officer who'd briefed them on the mission. He jogged across the tarmac, his face grave. "Where's Commander Harrison?" Davis couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. Rodriguez stepped forward instead, his voice rough. "KIA, we think. We had to leave him behind." "Jesus Christ." Morrison's face went pale. "Tell me exactly what happened, everything." The debriefing room was small and windowless, smelling of stale coffee and old briefing papers. Davis stood at the front, his team seated behind him, while Morrison and 3 other officers listened to his after-action report. Davis's voice remained flat, mechanical, as he described the ambush, the overwhelming enemy forces, Harrison's wounds, and his final order. He commanded us to withdraw while he provided covering fire, Davis concluded. It was a direct order from a superior officer. We had no choice. You always have a choice, Lieutenant. The words came from Colonel Hendricks, commander of Special Operations at Bagram. His tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. But in this case, you made the right one. Harrison knew he was buying time for his team. That's what leaders do. With all due respect, sir, it doesn't feel right. Davis's voice cracked slightly. We left him there to die. Behind him, Rodriguez slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small room. We should go back, right now. Get a company of Rangers, air support, everything we've got. We go back and we bring him home. Morrison shook his head. That compound will be empty by now. Taliban aren't stupid. They know we'll be looking for Harrison. They'll have moved him, probably before your helicopter even cleared the area. Then we find out where they took him, Mitchell said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since the mission. We hunt them down. Hendricks leaned back in his chair, his expression weary. Gentlemen, I understand your feelings, but we're talking about a search across hundreds of square miles of hostile territory. The Taliban could have moved Harrison to Pakistan, to any number of mountain hideouts, to safe houses in Kabul. We don't have actionable intelligence. So we just write him off. Davis couldn't keep the anger from his voice. Declare him KIA and move on. I didn't say that. Hendricks pulled out a folder. We're monitoring all intelligence channels. SIGINT is listening for any chatter about a captured American officer. We've got drones sweeping the area. If Harrison's alive and we can locate him, we'll mount a rescue operation. But right now, we're operating blind. The room fell silent. Every man present knew the grim statistics. Captured American soldiers in Afghanistan rarely survived long. The Taliban loved propaganda videos, public executions. Harrison's death would be broadcast worldwide within days, maybe hours. There might be another option. Everyone turned toward the doorway. A woman stood there, her frame lean and athletic, her face weathered by sun and wind. She wore Marine Corps fatigues with captain's bars on her collar. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes, cold, calculating eyes that had seen too much death, swept across the room with predatory intensity. Captain Chen, Hendricks said, surprise evident in his voice. What are you doing here? I heard about Harrison. She stepped into the room, moving with a fluid grace that reminded Davis of a hunting cat. I want in on the rescue operation. Morrison frowned. With all due respect, Captain, there is no rescue operation. Not yet. We don't even know where he is. Then I'll find him. Chen's voice was flat, emotionless. Not a boast, a statement of fact. Rodriguez stood up, his eyes narrowing. Who the hell are you? Captain Sarah Chen, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Mitchell's voice held a note of awe. Your Ghost. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every operator had heard of Ghost. The legend. The Phantom. The Marine sniper with 98 confirmed kills who operated alone in the Hindu Kush, hunting high-value targets with supernatural precision. Taliban fighters whispered her name in fear. Some didn't believe she existed, just a myth created by American propaganda. But she was very real. Chen's eyes remained fixed on Hendricks. I've operated in that region for 2 years. I know every village, every trail, every Taliban safe house within a 100-mile radius. I have contacts, locals who trust me. If Harrison's alive, I can find him. This is a SEAL operation, Captain, Morrison said carefully. With all due respect to your service, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is. For the first time, emotion flickered across Chen's face. Harrison saved my brother's life in Fallujah, 2006. David Chen, Marine Corps Infantry. He was trapped in a building, pinned down by insurgent fire. Harrison led his SEAL team across 200 meters of open ground under heavy fire to extract him and 3 other Marines. My brother came home because of Jake Harrison. She paused, her jaw tight. I owe him a blood debt. I pay my debts. Davis studied her carefully. Ghost. He'd heard the stories, the impossible shots, the solo missions deep in enemy territory, the way she seemed to disappear into the mountains and emerge weeks later with another high-value target eliminated. If anyone could find Harrison, it might be her. Even if you locate him, Hendricks said, you can't extract him alone. You'd need a full team, air support, medical evacuation. I don't need permission, Colonel. Chen's voice was ice. I'm telling you as a courtesy. I'm going after Harrison whether you authorize it or not. I'd prefer to coordinate with JSOC so we don't have friendly fire incidents, but I'll go dark if necessary. The room erupted into arguments. Morrison insisted she needed proper authorization. Hendricks demanded she follow the chain of command, but Davis wasn't listening to them. He was watching Chen's eyes, the absolute certainty he saw there. This woman would walk into hell itself to find Harrison, and she wouldn't come back without him. I'm going with you, Davis said suddenly. Chen turned to him, assessing. You're the XO, you made the call to leave him. Yes, Davis met her gaze without flinching, which means I'm the one who brings him home. My team comes too. Rodriguez stood immediately. Damn right we do. One by one, the rest of Team 7 rose to their feet. Mitchell, Johnson, Williams, Thompson, even Patterson, his wounded arm in a sling. Not one of them spoke, but their intention was clear. Chen allowed herself the ghost of a smile, the first expression Davis had seen from her. You'll do. She turned back to Hendricks. Colonel, you can either support this operation or stay out of our way. Your choice. But I'm leaving in 2 hours with or without your blessing. Hendricks stared at her for a long moment, then sighed heavily. You're putting me in an impossible position, Captain. Good commanders make impossible decisions every day, sir. Chen's voice softened slightly. Harrison made one last night. He chose his men over himself. Now we choose him. That's how this works. The silence stretched out. Finally, Hendricks nodded slowly. You've got 72 hours. After that, I have to report this up the chain and it becomes a political nightmare. Find him fast, Captain, and bring him home. Yes, sir. Chen was already moving toward the door. Lieutenant Davis, get your team ready. We move light, sniper rifles, basic combat load, enough supplies for 3 days in the mountains. No heavy weapons, no body armor. We're ghosts now. As she left the room, Rodriguez whispered to Davis, Is she for real? Davis watched her disappear down the corridor. I think she might be our only chance. Mitchell was checking his rifle, his sniper's eyes distant. Ghost doesn't miss, and she doesn't fail. If Harrison's alive, she'll find him. Within 2 hours, Captain Sarah Chen and the 7 remaining members of SEAL Team 7 had gathered their gear and were boarding a helicopter. No official authorization. No backup plan. Just 8 warriors heading into the mountains on an impossible rescue mission. As the Black Hawk lifted off, Davis looked at Chen. She sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and controlled, preparing mentally for what lay ahead. Then her eyes opened, and Davis saw something in them that made his blood run cold. Ghost wasn't just hunting for Harrison. She was hunting for vengeance. And God help anyone who stood in her way. The helicopter dropped them in a remote valley 20 kilometers from the ambush site, low enough that Taliban radar wouldn't pick them up. Chen was first out, her boots hitting the rocky ground with practiced silence. The SEAL team followed, and within 30 seconds the Black Hawk had vanished into the pre-dawn darkness, its rotor wash fading to nothing. They were alone in enemy territory. Chen knelt on the ground, studying the terrain through her night vision. The mountains rose around them like jagged teeth, ancient and merciless. She'd spent 2 years learning these peaks, these valleys, every hidden trail the Taliban used to move weapons and fighters. This was her hunting ground. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "spread your team in a defensive perimeter. We hold here until I return." Davis frowned. "Return from where?" "Reconnaissance." Chen was already moving, checking her gear with swift efficiency. She carried a Mk-13 sniper rifle, a Sig Sauer P226 pistol, minimal ammunition, water, and nothing else. No radio, no backup. "There's a village 2 clicks north. The elder there owes me a favor. If anyone knows where the Taliban took Harrison, it'll be him." "You're going alone, into a village full of potential hostiles." Chen's cold eyes met his. "I work alone, Lieutenant. That's why they call me Ghost. I'll be back before sunrise." Before Davis could protest, she melted into the darkness. One moment she was there, the next she was gone, vanished like smoke. Mitchell whistled low. "That's unnatural." "That's why she's alive," Rodriguez muttered. "Come on, set up defensive positions. If Ghost trusts this village, we trust Ghost." But Davis couldn't shake his unease as he watched the darkness where Chen had disappeared. They were betting everything on a Marine sniper none of them had worked with before, in terrain they barely knew, hunting for a commander who might already be dead. It was insanity. But it was also their only chance. Chen moved through the pre-dawn darkness like a shadow, her footsteps silent on the rocky trail. She'd walked this path a dozen times, always at night, always alone. The village of Kala Izaman sat in a small valley, 43 families who'd learned to survive by staying neutral in a war that had raged for decades. The elder Haji Rahim had helped her once before. She'd saved his grandson from a Taliban punishment execution. The boy had been accused of spying for the Americans. Chen had killed 3 Taliban fighters from 800 meters, then disappeared before anyone knew she'd been there. The old man had never forgotten. She approached the village from the east, where the terrain provided cover. Dogs barked in the distance, but they were used to mountain predators. One more shadow wouldn't alarm them. She scaled the wall surrounding Rahim's compound, old hands at climbing, feet finding invisible holds, and dropped silently into his courtyard. The old man was already awake, praying in the small room adjacent to his home. Chen waited, patient as stone, until he finished. When he turned, he showed no surprise at finding an American soldier in his courtyard. "Salam alaikum, Ghost," he said in accented English. "I wondered when you would come." "You've heard about the American commander." It wasn't a question. Rahim nodded slowly, his weathered face grave in the lamplight. "The Taliban speak of nothing else. A great prize. They say he killed 6 of their fighters before they took him." "Where is he?" The old man hesitated. Chen understood. Giving information meant choosing sides, and choosing sides in this war meant death for him and his family. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photograph. Her brother David in his Marine uniform, smiling at the camera. Alive. "The commander in that compound saved my brother's life," she said quietly. "I need to save his. Please, Haji." Rahim studied the photograph, then looked into Chen's eyes. Whatever he saw there made him nod. The caves, 5 kilometers east of where they captured him. The old Mujahideen positions from the Soviet War. Many caves, many tunnels, very defensible. Chen's mind was already mapping the terrain. She knew those caves, had scouted them months ago as potential sniper positions. Difficult to assault, impossible to surround completely. The Taliban had chosen well. "How many fighters?" 20, maybe more. They bring reinforcements. Very important prisoner." Rahim paused. "There is more. They plan to kill him at dawn 3 days from now. They film the execution, send it across the world. They want to show American soldiers can be defeated." 3 days, 72 hours. Chen felt ice form in her stomach, not much time. "Thank you, Haji." She turned to leave. "Ghost," the old man's voice stopped her. "These caves, many good men have died in them. Soviets, Taliban, Americans. The mountains drink blood like water, be careful." "I'm always careful." Chen scaled the wall and disappeared into the darkness. She was back at the SEAL position within an hour, materializing out of the shadows so suddenly that Thompson nearly shot her. Jesus, a little warning next time. We move now, Chen said, ignoring him. She knelt and sketched a rough map in the dirt using her knife. Harrison's here in a cave complex 5 clicks east. At least 20 Taliban, probably more. They're planning to execute him in 3 days. Davis studied the map. That's not much time to plan an assault. We're not assaulting anything, not yet. Chen's finger traced a route through the mountains. We establish overwatch here, high ground with clean sight lines to the cave entrance. I conduct detailed reconnaissance, map their patrol patterns, identify key targets. Then we call in support and extract Harrison. And if we can't get support in time? Chen's smile was cold and sharp as a knife. Then I start killing people until there's nobody left to stop us. Mitchell grinned. I like her style. They moved through the mountains as the sun rose, painting the peaks gold and crimson. Chen led them along routes that didn't appear on any map, game trails, old smuggling paths, dried stream beds that provided concealment from above. She moved with absolute confidence, never hesitating, never doubling back. She really does know every inch of this terrain, Johnson whispered to Davis. Let's hope that's enough. It took them 6 hours of hard climbing to reach Chen's chosen observation post, a rocky outcrop 1,700 meters from the cave complex, with perfect sight lines and multiple escape routes. The position was invisible from below, shielded from aerial observation by an overhang, and offered commanding views of the entire valley. Chen immediately began setting up her rifle, her movements precise and economical. She adjusted the scope, calculated range and wind, and settled into position. Through her scope, she could see the cave entrance clearly, guards posted outside, movement in the shadows within. There, she whispered. 3rd cave from the left, 2 guards at the entrance. That's where they're keeping high-value prisoners. Davis pulled out his binoculars. How do you know? See the guards, they're not Taliban regulars, they're too disciplined, too alert. Those are Haqqani network fighters, elite. They only guard important assets. Chen's voice was clinically detached, analytical. I count 6 external guards rotating every 4 hours, likely more inside. For the next 12 hours, Chen didn't move from her position. She watched, cataloged, memorized every guard rotation, every patrol pattern, which fighters were alert, which were lazy, where the weak points were. The SEAL team took turns resting, but Chen remained motionless, her eye pressed to her scope, her breathing slow and controlled. As darkness fell, Davis crawled up beside her. You need to rest. I can take watch. I don't need rest. I need information. But her voice was less harsh than before. In 2 hours, they'll bring Harrison outside. They do it every evening. Let the prisoner see the sunset before taking him back inside. Psychological warfare makes them think about their mortality. How do you know that? Because I've been watching Taliban prisoner protocols for 2 years. Chen adjusted her scope fractionally. In my line of work, patterns mean everything. Break the pattern, you break the enemy. Right on schedule, 2 hours later, 4 Taliban fighters emerged from the cave. Between them stumbled a figure, hands bound, legs shackled, a black hood over his head. Even at 1,700 meters, even through the scope, Chen could see the injuries. The way he favored his left side, the stiffness in his leg. But he was alive. Commander Jake Harrison was alive. I've got eyes on target, Chen said quietly. He's mobile but injured, left shoulder and right leg compromised. They've beaten him, facial trauma visible even with the hood, but he's conscious and aware. Davis felt emotion surge through his chest. He's alive. Thank God he's alive. For now, Chen tracked Harrison as the guards led him to the edge of the cliff, letting him see the sunset with the hood briefly removed. Even through the scope, she could see his face, swollen, bruised, defiant. But in 2.5 days they'll kill him. We need to move fast. She keyed her encrypted satellite radio. Overwatch, this is Ghost. I have positive identification on Hawk 1. Target is alive. Repeat, target is alive. Requesting immediate tactical support for rescue operation. Sending coordinates now. The response crackled back. Ghost, Overwatch, coordinates received. Be advised, nearest QRF is 40 minutes out and political authorization for cross-border operation is pending. Hold position and observe. Do not engage without authorization. Chen's jaw tightened. Overwatch, target has 72 hours before execution. We don't have time for politics. Understood, Ghost. Continue reconnaissance. Command is working on authorization. Overwatch out. Chen lowered the radio, her eyes still locked on Harrison through her scope. The Taliban guards were leading him back inside the cave now, shoving him roughly. He stumbled but didn't fall. Still fighting. Still refusing to break. What now? Davis asked. Now we wait. Chen's voice was ice. And we prepare. Because authorized or not, in 72 hours, I'm going to kill every person between me and Commander Harrison. And then I'm bringing him home. She chambered a round in her rifle, the metallic sound sharp in the mountain silence. The hunt had begun. 48 hours passed in agonizing slow motion. Chen remained in her observation post, barely moving, barely sleeping. She'd mapped every inch of the cave complex, documented every guard rotation, identified 37 distinct Taliban fighters. The SEAL team rotated shifts, bringing her water and protein bars that she consumed without taking her eye from the scope. You need real rest, Davis insisted on the second night. You're no good to us if you collapse. I'll rest when Harrison's safe. Chen's voice was hoarse from dehydration, but her hands remained steady on her rifle. Look, third guard from the left. He's the commander. See how the others defer to him. Take him out first, the rest will panic. Davis studied the scene through his binoculars. Chen was right. The tall fighter with the distinctive Pakal hat gave orders, checked positions, maintained discipline. A professional soldier, not a fanatic teenager. Command finally responded, Davis said quietly. They're denying authorization for the rescue op. Chen's jaw tightened, but she didn't take her eye from the scope. On what grounds? Political fallout. Risk assessment shows 70% probability of mission failure. They're concerned about losing more operators. Davis's voice was bitter. They want us to maintain observation and wait for a larger-scale operation. How long? 5 to 7 days. Harrison will be dead in 24 hours. Chen finally looked away from her scope, her eyes bloodshot and fierce. Tell me you're not accepting that order, Lieutenant. Davis met her gaze. Behind him, the rest of Team 7 had gathered, their faces grim. Rodriguez spoke first. We didn't come here to watch our commander die on a video feed. We came to bring him home. Damn right, Mitchell added. I don't care what command says. Chen studied each man carefully. They were willing to throw away their careers, face court-martial, possibly die in these mountains, all for one man. That was the kind of loyalty she understood, the kind worth fighting for. Then here's what we do. She turned back to her scope, her mind already calculating angles, distances, timing. Dawn assault. The guards are most complacent then, tired from night watch, waiting for relief. I provide overwatch from this position. You 7 infiltrate from the North Ridge here. She pointed to a route on her sketch. I eliminate sentries silently, create a corridor of fire. You extract Harrison and fall back to the secondary LZ. That's a 1,700-meter shot in variable mountain winds, Mitchell said, in low light conditions. I've made harder shots. Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. My longest confirmed kill is 1,900 meters. I don't miss, Mitchell, not when it matters. Williams frowned, studying the terrain. Even if you take out the external guards, there's at least 20 more inside those caves. We'll be outnumbered 3 to 1. Not if I keep shooting. Chen smiled coldly. They won't know where the shots are coming from. 1,700 meters in these mountains with suppressor and proper concealment. They'll think Allah himself is striking them down. Fear and confusion are force multipliers. Davis made his decision. We go at dawn, 4 hours from now. Everyone prep your gear, get what rest you can. Mitchell, your secondary overwatch, find a position with different angles. Chen, your primary. Rodriguez, you lead the extraction team. What about you? Rodriguez asked. I'm going in with you. Harrison's my responsibility. Davis's voice was firm. I left him behind, I bring him home. The team dispersed to prepare. Chen remained at her position, her eye returning to the scope. She could see Harrison's cave entrance, guards changing shift. Somewhere in that darkness, the commander was waiting, wounded, beaten, but not broken. Hold on, she whispered, we're coming. Dawn came slowly to the Hindu Kush, the sky gradually brightening from black to deep purple to pale gray. Chen had been in position for 6 hours without moving, her body temperature matching the rocks around her, her breathing imperceptible. She'd become part of the mountain itself. Through her scope, she watched the guards. They were tired, yawning, passing around a thermos of tea. The morning shift hadn't arrived yet. Perfect. All elements, this is Ghost, she whispered into her radio. Beginning target elimination in 60 seconds. Call out if you need me to hold. Extraction team in position, Rodriguez responded. We're ready. Secondary overwatch ready. Mitchell confirmed from his position 400 meters to Chen's east. Chen's breathing slowed even further. Her heartbeat steadied to a calm, measured rhythm. The world narrowed to what she could see through her scope, a circle of crystal clarity while everything else faded away. First target, the guard commander with the Pakal hat standing near the cave entrance. Range, 1,743 meters. Wind, 3 knots from the northwest, gusting. Temperature, 42 degrees. Barometric pressure, falling. Her mind calculated automatically, adjusting for every variable. She exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The suppressed rifle made a sound like a cough. 1,700 meters away, the guard commander's head snapped back, and he crumpled to the ground. The other guards didn't immediately react. The sound of the shot wouldn't reach them for nearly 5 seconds, and even then they wouldn't know where it came from. Chen cycled the bolt smoothly, chambering another round. Second target, the guard by the ammunition cache. She fired, he dropped. Now the guards were reacting, shouting in confusion, trying to understand where the shots were coming from. They scattered for cover, but Chen was already tracking her third target. Fire. A guard sprinting for the cave entrance fell mid-stride. 3 down, she reported calmly. Corridor is open, move now. The SEAL team broke from cover, sprinting down the mountainside toward the caves. Chen continued firing with mechanical precision. Fourth target, a guard emerging from a secondary cave. Fifth target, a fighter trying to man a PKM machine gun. Sixth target, someone shouting orders from behind a rock formation. 6 shots, 6 kills, 8 minutes. Contact, they're bringing up reinforcements from the southern caves. Davis's voice crackled over the radio. Chen swiveled her rifle, acquiring the new threats. 7 fighters pouring out of a cave entrance she'd marked as a secondary position. Too many targets, moving too fast. She picked the leader and fired. He went down. The others dove for cover. Mitchell, southern cave entrance, multiple targets, she directed. I see them. Mitchell's rifle boomed. 2 more Taliban fighters fell. But now the enemy had figured out they were under sniper fire, even if they couldn't locate the shooters. Chen watched through her scope as a spotter, young, maybe 19, climbed onto a boulder with binoculars, scanning the mountains systematically. He was good, methodical, and he was looking in her general direction. Chen's scope centered on him. Range, 1,700 meters. The boy was just doing his job, just trying to protect his position. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she remembered Harrison, beaten and chained in that cave. She fired. The spotter tumbled backward off the boulder. But he'd been keying a radio when she shot him. Within seconds, heavy machine gun fire erupted from 3 positions simultaneously, raking the mountainside where Chen was hidden. They didn't know her exact location, but they were getting close. Rocks exploded around her position. Bullets whined off stone, sending chips of granite flying. Chen pressed herself flat, waiting for the burst to pass. When it did, she immediately relocated 15 meters to her right, to a backup position she'd scouted 2 days earlier. From the new angle, she could see a Taliban fighter behind a Dushka heavy machine gun, the weapon that had nearly found her. She didn't hesitate. The .50 caliber rifle spoke once, and the gunner's head disappeared in a red mist. "Chen, you're taking fire," Davis shouted over the radio. "Pull back." "Negative, you're not at Harrison's position yet." Chen's voice remained eerily calm despite bullets cracking through the air around her. "I've got you covered. Keep moving." She acquired another target, a fighter with an RPG. Fired. The man collapsed, the RPG tumbling from his hands and detonating against the cave wall. The explosion brought down a shower of rocks that buried 2 more Taliban fighters. 13 confirmed kills in 11 minutes. Rodriguez's voice came over the radio, urgent. "We've reached the cave entrance. Breaching now." Inside the dark cave, Commander Jake Harrison heard the distant gunfire and explosions. He'd been drifting in and out of consciousness, his body a landscape of pain. The Taliban had beaten him methodically, professionally, trying to extract information he'd never give them. But now he heard American weapons, the distinctive crack of M4 carbines, and underneath it all the steady, rhythmic sound of a high-powered rifle picking off targets with supernatural accuracy. Someone was coming for him. His cracked lips formed words in the darkness. "Took you long enough." Outside, Chen was in her element. She'd eliminated 14 Taliban fighters, wounded 3 more, and created enough chaos that the remaining enemy didn't know whether to fight, flee, or hide. Her rifle was an extension of her will, each shot a surgical strike that removed another obstacle between her team and their commander. But then she saw something that made ice flood her veins. A pickup truck with a mounted machine gun was racing up the mountain road toward the cave complex. Not just one, 3 of them, reinforcements, at least 20 fresh fighters. "Extraction team, be advised," Chen said into her radio, her voice tight. "You've got heavy reinforcements incoming. 3 technicals, 20+ hostiles, ETA 2 minutes. "Copy that," Rodriguez replied. "We've got Harrison, he's alive, moving to exfil now." Chen watched through her scope as the technicals bounced up the rocky road. The lead vehicle's gunner was already spraying the mountainside with covering fire. She centered her crosshairs on him and fired. The gunner slumped over his weapon. But the trucks kept coming. "Mitchell, I need help on those vehicles." "Working on it." Mitchell's rifle boomed twice. The second technical's windshield shattered and the vehicle swerved off the road, crashing into a boulder. 2 down, 1 to go. Chen tracked the last technical. It had stopped, and fighters were pouring out, taking up defensive positions. They were between the SEAL team and their escape route. "This is going to be close," Chen muttered. She began firing as fast as she could cycle the bolt. 1 shot, 2, 3. Taliban fighters fell, but there were too many and they were getting organized. The impossible rescue had just become even more impossible. And they were running out of time. Rodriguez kicked through the cave entrance, his rifle sweeping the darkness. The stench hit him immediately, blood, sweat, human waste. 2 Taliban guards spun toward him, reaching for their weapons. Rodriguez fired twice, dropping them both before they could raise their AKs. "Clear left," Williams swept right, his weapon light cutting through the gloom. "Clear right." Davis pushed past them into the cave's interior. In the dim light filtering from outside, He saw a figure chained to the cave wall, slumped forward, head hanging. The man's uniform was torn and blood-stained, his face swollen beyond recognition. "Commander," Davis's voice cracked. The figure's head lifted slowly. Through split lips and blackened eyes, Commander Jake Harrison managed a painful grin. "About damn time, Lieutenant." "Jesus Christ." Johnson rushed forward with his medical kit, already assessing Harrison's injuries. "Sir, we need to get you out of here now." "I'm not going anywhere fast." Harrison's voice was a rasp. His right leg was grotesquely swollen, infected. His left shoulder hung at an unnatural angle. Pretty sure they broke a few ribs too, maybe a collarbone, lost count after day one. Rodriguez was already working on the chains with bolt cutters. "We're getting you home, Commander, all of us, together this time." The chains fell away. Harrison tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Davis caught him, taking his weight. "I've got you, sir." "I can walk." "No, you can't." Johnson was wrapping Harrison's leg with emergency bandages, trying to stabilize the infection. "That femoral wound reopened. You've lost a lot of blood. You're going on someone's back whether you like it or not." Outside, Chen's voice crackled urgently over the radio. "Extraction team, be advised. You've got heavy reinforcements incoming. 3 technicals, 20+ hostiles, ETA 2 minutes. "Copy that," Rodriguez replied. He looked at Davis. "We need to move now." They fashioned a quick carry rig using web gear and began moving Harrison toward the exit. Every step made him grunt in pain, but he bit down on the sounds, refusing to slow them down. Thompson and Williams took point. Rodriguez and Davis carried Harrison, and Johnson brought up the rear. They emerged from the cave into chaos. Chen's rifle was singing a song of death from the mountainside. Taliban fighters were falling, but more kept coming. The remaining technical had disgorged its passengers, and now at least 15 fighters were forming a defensive line between the SEALs and their escape route. "We're pinned," Williams shouted, ducking as bullets chewed into the rock face beside him. From her position, Chen could see the tactical nightmare unfolding. The SEALs were trapped between the caves and the Taliban reinforcements, carrying a wounded man, with no cover and nowhere to go. In 30 seconds, they'd all be dead. Unless she did something impossible. She keyed her radio. "Extraction team, hold position behind that boulder cluster at your 10 o'clock. I'm going to clear your path." "Chen, there's too many," Davis started. "Trust me." Chen took a deep breath and became death itself. The first Taliban fighter to die never heard the shot. He simply fell, a hole appearing in his chest. The second went down before the first hit the ground. The third was turning to run when Chen's bullet found his spine. She was operating on pure instinct now, her conscious mind stepping aside to let muscle memory and thousands of hours of training take over. Acquire target. Calculate. Fire. Cycle bolt. Acquire next target. The rhythm was hypnotic, mechanical, perfect. 4 kills, 5, 6. But the Taliban had finally figured out her general direction. A hail of bullets tore into her position, forcing her to roll away. She felt something hot slash across her left side, a ricochet or a grazing shot, she couldn't tell. Pain bloomed, sharp and insistent. Chen ignored it. She relocated 20 meters, found a new position, and kept shooting. 7, 8, 9. "The corridor's opening," Rodriguez shouted. "Move, move." The SEALs broke from cover, carrying Harrison between them. They ran through the gap Chen had created, stepping over bodies, their boots slipping on blood-soaked rocks. Taliban fighters tried to close the gap, but Chen's rifle spoke again and again, each shot precisely placed, each one buying precious seconds. Then her radio crackled with Mitchell's voice, tight with concern. "Chen, you've got a spotter on the ridge above you. He's got binos and a radio, if he calls in your position." Chen was already moving, scanning the ridge line through her scope. There, a young Taliban fighter with binoculars, frantically speaking into a radio handset. He was 200 meters higher than her position, with a perfect view of where she'd been shooting from. The range was extreme. 1,400 meters uphill, severe angle compensation required. The wind was swirling unpredictably in the mountain thermals. It was a shot that should have been impossible. Chen steadied her breathing and fired. The spotter tumbled backward off the ridge, his radio still clutched in his dead hand. But he'd already made the call. Chen, RPG. Mitchell's warning came a second too late. The rocket-propelled grenade streaked toward her position, trailing white smoke. Chen threw herself sideways, but the blast wave caught her anyway, lifting her off the ground and slamming her into a rock outcropping. Her rifle flew from her hands. The world spun, filled with smoke and the ringing in her ears. She tried to stand and gasped. Her left side was on fire. The earlier graze had become something worse. She could feel blood soaking through her uniform. Cracked ribs, maybe, or worse. Her left arm wasn't responding properly. Chen, status. Davis's voice sounded distant, muffled. She tried to key her radio but couldn't find it. Must have been blown away in the blast. She looked around frantically for her rifle. There, 15 feet away, the scope cracked, probably zeroed completely off now. No radio, damaged rifle, wounded, and the Taliban were advancing on her position. Chen pulled her sidearm, the Sig Sauer P226, and checked the magazine. 15 rounds, against at least 10 fighters climbing toward her position. Well, she muttered, tasting blood, this is going to be interesting. She could see the SEAL team in the valley below making good progress toward the extraction point with Harrison. They'd make it. That was all that mattered. She'd bought them the time they needed. Now she just had to survive long enough to get out herself. Taliban fighters appeared between the rocks, weapons raised. Chen fired twice, dropping the lead man. The others scattered, but they knew where she was now. They began flanking, moving with tactical precision. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped on a mountainside with nowhere to go. Then Mitchell's voice boomed from his position. Chen, stay down. His rifle cracked 3 times in rapid succession. 3 Taliban fighters fell, their bodies tumbling down the rocky slope. But more were coming from another direction, and Mitchell couldn't cover all the angles. Chen tried to move, to find better cover, but her left leg buckled. She looked down and saw the problem. Shrapnel from the RPG had torn through her thigh. She'd been so focused on the mission she hadn't even felt it. Damn it, she hissed, applying pressure to the wound with one hand while keeping her pistol trained with the other. In the valley, Rodriguez saw Chen's situation. Commanders secured in the bird. Davis, we need to go back for Ghost. Negative, Harrison's voice, weak but commanding, came over the radio. Chen knew the risks. Don't throw away what she's given us. Sir, we can't just leave her. You won't have to. A new voice cut through the radio traffic, deep, authoritative, backed by the thunder of rotor blades. This is Apache lead. We've got eyes on Ghost's position. Danger close fire mission authorized. Ghost, if you can hear this, mark your position and get your head down. Chen had lost her radio, but she heard the Apache before she saw them. 2 AH-64s screaming over the ridge line like avenging angels. She fumbled in her vest for a signal flare, found it, and fired it into the sky. Red smoke billowed around her position. Target marked, Apache lead confirmed. Engaging. The world exploded in fire and thunder. The Apache's 30 chain gun roared to life, each round the size of a soda bottle, tearing through rock and flesh with equal ease. Taliban fighters simply ceased to exist, their bodies disintegrating under the onslaught. Hellfire missiles streaked from the helicopter's weapons pods, obliterating the technical and everything around it. In 15 seconds of apocalyptic violence, the Apache attack helicopters erased the Taliban threat. Ghost, this is Apache lead. You still breathing down there? Chen pulled herself upright, pain screaming through her body. Still breathing, barely. Good, stay put. We're sending the extraction bird to your position. And Ghost, that was some damn fine shooting. Counted 14 confirmed kills from your position alone. 15, Chen corrected, reloading her pistol despite the shaking in her hands. I got the spotter. 15, even better. Apache lead actually sounded impressed. Hang tight, help's on the way. Minutes later, a Black Hawk descended toward Chen's position, its crew chief waving her aboard. She limped toward it, using her damaged rifle as a crutch, her left side screaming with every step. Strong hands grabbed her, pulling her into the cabin. She collapsed on the deck, finally allowing herself to feel the full extent of her injuries. Johnson was there immediately, cutting away her uniform to access the wounds. "You're one tough Marine," he said, working quickly. "Ribs are definitely cracked. Thigh wound needs surgery. That shoulder's dislocated, but you'll live." Chen's eyes found Harrison across the cabin. He was strapped to a stretcher, IV lines running into his arms, but he was conscious and looking at her with something like awe. 15 kills, he said, his voice barely audible over the rotors. "You saved us, Ghost." "We're not out yet," Chen replied, but her voice was fading. Blood loss and adrenaline crash were catching up with her. As the helicopter climbed away from the mountain, banking toward Bagram, Chen allowed her eyes to close. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, against every tactical calculation, they'd pulled it off. Harrison was alive. The team was alive. And Ghost had earned her legend. The Black Hawk climbed away from the mountain, but the celebration was premature. The pilot's voice cracked over the intercom, tight with urgency. "We've got company. 2 Taliban technicals blocking the valley exit. They've got heavy weapons. If we fly through, they'll shred us." Chen forced her eyes open despite the pain. Through the open door, she could see the valley narrowing ahead, a natural choke point. 2 pickup trucks armed with .50 caliber machine guns sat positioned on either side, their gunners tracking the helicopter's approach. It was a perfect ambush position. "Can we go around?" Davis asked. "Negative," the pilot responded. "We don't have the fuel for a mountain bypass. We go through or we don't go at all." Chen pulled herself upright, ignoring Johnson's protests. Her left side was on fire, her thigh bleeding through the bandages, but her mind was clear. She looked at her damaged rifle. The scope was cracked, the zero completely off. Useless at long range. But the technicals were only 400 meters away now. Close enough. "Give me that," she said, pointing to Mitchell's rifle. "You can barely stand." "Now, Mitchell." Her voice carried command authority that made the sniper hand over his weapon without further argument. Chen braced herself in the helicopter's doorway, her body screaming in protest. She had no spotter, no stable platform, and was shooting from a moving aircraft at moving targets while wounded. The shot was nearly impossible. Nearly. She steadied her breathing, forcing the pain into a distant corner of her mind. Through Mitchell's scope, she acquired the first technical's gunner, a bearded man in a gray dishdasha, his hands on the heavy machine gun's grips. The helicopter was banking, turning, the whole world tilting. Wind buffeted her position. Every variable was against her. Chen exhaled and fired. 1,400 meters away, the gunner's head snapped back. He slumped over his weapon, dead before his finger could squeeze the trigger. "Holy," the pilot's voice was awed. "Did she just—" "Second target," Chen muttered, already working the bolt. The remaining technical's gunner had opened fire, tracers streaking toward the helicopter. Bullets punched through the thin skin of the Black Hawk, one passing so close to Rodriguez's head that it singed his hair. Chen ignored it all. Her world narrowed to the crosshairs, the target, the shot. She could feel her heartbeat, feel the rhythm of the helicopter's movement, feel the wind against her face. She fired. The second gunner jerked backward, his weapon going silent. The technical swerved wildly as the driver panicked, crashing into a boulder and flipping onto its side in a cloud of dust. "Path is clear," the pilot shouted. "Hold on." The Black Hawk dropped into a tactical dive, racing through the valley at maximum speed. Taliban fighters on the ground fired up at them with small arms, but the helicopter was already past, climbing hard as it cleared the valley mouth. Chen sagged back from the doorway, Mitchell catching her before she collapsed completely. "2 shots," he said softly, "from a moving helicopter, at 1,400 meters, that's impossible." "Apparently not." Chen's voice was fading again, blood loss catching up with her. "But they weren't safe yet." "Multiple hostiles ahead," the door gunner suddenly shouted. "Looks like a prepared ambush position." Through the open door, Chen could see the problem. A ridge line overlooked their flight path, and at least a dozen Taliban fighters were positioned along it with RPGs and heavy weapons. The Black Hawk was flying right into a kill zone. The co-pilot's voice was grim. "They knew our extraction route. This whole thing's been coordinated. We're flying into a trap." Harrison, strapped to his stretcher but conscious, made a decision. "Pilot, can you get us on the ground? Find cover." "There's a depression 200 meters ahead. Rocky cover. I can set down there, but then we're stuck until air support arrives." "Do it, get us down." The helicopter banked hard, dropping fast toward the rocky depression. Taliban fighters on the ridge opened up with everything they had. An RPG streaked past, missing by meters. Machine gun fire raked across the helicopter's tail, systems beginning to fail. "We're hit, we're hit." The pilot fought the controls as warning lights flashed across his dashboard. The Black Hawk slammed into the ground hard, bouncing once before settling in a cloud of dust and debris. The rotors were still spinning, but the engine was making terrible grinding sounds. "Everyone out," Davis shouted. "Get the commander to cover." The SEAL team poured out of the damaged helicopter, carrying Harrison and helping Chen. They took up defensive positions behind a cluster of boulders as the pilot and crew chief scrambled out, weapons drawn. From the ridge above, Taliban fighters were already moving down toward them, emboldened by the downed helicopter. Chen counted at least 20 hostiles, maybe more. "We're pinned," Rodriguez said grimly. "Can't move, the commander can't stay here. We need air support now." Davis was already on the radio. "Any station, this is Viper 6. We are down, repeat, we are down. Emergency extraction required. Taking heavy fire." "Viper 6, this is Reaper, we copy. Fast movers inbound, ETA 12 minutes. "We don't have 12 minutes. Davis looked at the approaching Taliban fighters. 8 minutes, maybe 10 before they were overrun. Harrison tried to sit up despite his injuries. "Form a defensive perimeter. Make them pay for every meter. If we're going down, we go down fighting." "Nobody's going down." Chen's voice was weak but determined. She'd positioned herself behind a rock with Mitchell's rifle, her breathing labored but steady. "Mitchell, take the right flank. I've got center. Make every shot count." "You can barely hold the rifle." "Then I'll make it quick." Chen chambered around, her hands shaking but her eyes clear. "Come on, you bastards, let's dance." The Taliban fighters advanced in a loose formation, firing as they moved. Chen's rifle spoke first. A fighter fell. Mitchell fired, another dropped. The SEAL team joined in, their disciplined fire creating a wall of lead. But the enemy kept coming. Chen fired again, and again. Each shot took immense concentration, fighting through pain and blood loss. She could feel herself fatting, her vision tunneling. But every time her crosshairs found a target, she squeezed the trigger. 7 confirmed kills, 8, 9. A Taliban fighter got within 50 meters, raising an RPG. Williams cut him down with a burst from his M4, but not before the man fired. The rocket screamed toward their position, and everyone ducked. The explosion was deafening, showering them with rocks and dirt. When the smoke cleared, Chen realized she couldn't hear out of her left ear. Everything sounded muffled, distant. 4 minutes, Davis shouted, checking his watch. Air support in 4 minutes. Chen fired again. 10 kills. Her rifle's bolt locked back, empty magazine. She fumbled for a reload but couldn't find one. Her vision was graying at the edges. Out, she said simply, letting the rifle fall. Mitchell handed her his pistol. Make it count. The Taliban were within 30 meters now, too close. Hand-to-hand range. This was going to get ugly. Then the world exploded with sound and fury. 2 Apache attack helicopters roared over the ridgeline, their 30 chain guns unleashing hell. Taliban fighters were torn apart, their bodies shredded by high-explosive rounds. Hellfire missiles streaked into concentrations of enemy fighters, the explosions walking across the mountainside like the footsteps of an angry god. In 20 seconds, the Taliban assault dissolved into chaos and death. Viper 6, this is Apache lead. Sorry we're late to the party. Area is secure. Extraction bird inbound, ETA 2 minutes. Chen slumped back against the rock, the pistol falling from her nerveless fingers. She'd done it. They'd all done it. Against impossible odds, against every tactical disadvantage, they'd survived. Harrison was being loaded onto a fresh helicopter, medics swarming him. The SEAL team was battered but alive, every single man accounted for. Rodriguez appeared above Chen, his huge hand reaching down. Come on, Ghost, time to go home. Can't move, Chen admitted. Everything hurts. Then I'll carry you. Rodriguez lifted her as gently as a child, cradling her against his chest as he walked toward the waiting helicopter. Through fading consciousness, Chen heard Harrison's voice. Is Ghost alive? She's alive, sir, barely, but she's one tough Marine. Damn right she is. Harrison's voice was filled with pride and gratitude. She saved us all. As the helicopter lifted off, finally escaping the deadly mountains, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The hunt was over. The mission was complete. Commander Jake, Hawk Harrison was going home. And so was Ghost. The base hospital at Bagram smelled of antiseptic and coffee. Commander Jake Harrison lay in a recovery bed, tubes and monitors connected to his battered body. 3 surgeries in 2 days had saved his leg, repaired his shoulder, and cleaned out the infections that had nearly killed him. The doctors said he'd live. Whether he'd ever operate again was another question. But he was alive. Outside his room, the 7 members of SEAL Team 7 maintained a constant vigil. They'd been there for 48 hours straight, taking turns sleeping in the waiting area chairs, refusing to leave until their commander was out of danger. Davis sat closest to the door, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion and emotion. Down the hall, in another recovery room, Captain Sarah Chen was undergoing her own medical ordeal. The shrapnel had been removed from her thigh, her ribs wrapped, her shoulder relocated. She'd lost 2 pints of blood and suffered a mild concussion from the RPG blast. The doctors wanted to medevac her to Germany for further treatment. Chen had other ideas. I'm not going anywhere, she told the doctor flatly, pulling out her IV despite his protests. Not until I know Harrison's going to make it. Captain, you need proper rest. What I need is to see my team. Chen swung her legs off the bed, biting back a gasp of pain. Every movement hurt, but she'd endured worse. She grabbed a crutch and hobbled toward the door, the doctor trailing behind her helplessly. She found Harrison's room by following the cluster of SEALs in the hallway. They parted for her like water, their faces showing respect bordering on reverence. Rodriguez steadied her when she swayed slightly. Ghost, he said softly, you should be in bed. So should all of you. Chen looked past him to where Davis sat. How is he? Stable, awake, asking for you actually. Chen limped into the room. Harrison's eyes opened as she approached, and despite the bruises and swelling, his face broke into a genuine smile. There she is, he said, his voice rough but stronger than before. The woman who can't follow orders worth a damn, I specifically remember telling you to rest. I specifically remember you telling your team to leave you behind, Chen replied, settling carefully into the chair beside his bed. We're both bad at following orders, Commander. Harrison laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh, hurts like hell. He studied her face, seeing the exhaustion, the pain she was trying to hide, the blood-soaked bandages visible beneath her hospital gown. 15 confirmed kills, from 1,700 meters, in combat conditions. That's remarkable, Captain. 16, Chen corrected quietly. I got one more during the extraction, from a moving helicopter. The room fell silent. Every man present understood the significance of what she'd accomplished. Those weren't just statistics. Each shot had saved lives, bought precious seconds, turned an impossible mission into a successful one. Why, Harrison asked finally, why risk everything for me? You barely knew me. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. Fallujah, 2006. My brother was trapped in a building with 3 other Marines, surrounded, outnumbered, out of ammunition. The conventional wisdom said they were already dead, not worth risking more lives to save. She met Harrison's eyes. You didn't accept that conventional wisdom. You led your SEAL team across 200 meters of open ground, through machine gun fire and RPG strikes, to pull them out. My brother David came home because you decided 4 Marines were worth fighting for. Harrison's expression shifted, memory flooding back. I remember that mission. It was insane. We lost good men. But you saved 4 more. Chen's voice was fierce now. You showed me what it means to never leave someone behind. So when your team needed someone to go after you, there was never a question. I owed you a blood debt. Now it's paid. No, Harrison reached out with his good hand, gripping hers. Now we're family. That's how this works, Ghost. You don't pay family back. You just keep showing up for each other. The door opened, and Colonel Hendricks entered, followed by a full honor guard. The SEALs immediately stood at attention. Chen tried to rise, but Harrison kept hold of her hand. As you were, Hendricks said. He looked at Harrison, then at Chen, his stern face showing rare emotion. I'm supposed to court-martial half the people in this room for conducting an unauthorized operation against direct orders. The room tensed. Davis stepped forward. Sir, if anyone should face consequences, it should be me. I was the ranking. At ease, Lieutenant, Hendricks actually smiled. I said I'm supposed to. I didn't say I was going to. What you all did was reckless, insubordinate, and completely against protocol. He paused. It was also the bravest damn thing I've seen in 30 years of service. He turned to an aide, who handed him a wooden case. Captain Sarah Chen, by order of the Secretary of the Navy, and with the approval of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, you are hereby awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism in combat operations. Chen's breath caught. The Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. She tried to stand, but her injured leg wouldn't support her weight. A seated captain, Hendricks said gently. He opened the case, revealing the distinctive medal, a bronze cross with an eagle and anchor. Your actions during the rescue of Commander Harrison and his team demonstrated valor above and beyond the call of duty. 15 confirmed enemy kills from extreme range under combat conditions. Solo reconnaissance in hostile territory. Wounded in action while providing covering fire that enabled the successful extraction of 8 American service members. Harrison struggled to sit up, ignoring the doctor's protests. Colonel, permission to present the medal. Hendricks nodded, permission granted. With Davis and Rodriguez helping him, Harrison stood on unsteady legs. He took the medal with his good hand and limped to where Chen sat. Their eyes met, 2 warriors who'd faced death together, who'd refused to abandon each other, who understood the true meaning of sacrifice. Harrison carefully pinned the Navy Cross to Chen's hospital gown. This Marine gave me my life back, he said, his voice carrying through the room. She gave my men their commander back. Ghost is the finest warrior I've ever had the honor to serve alongside." Chen's eyes glistened with unshed tears, the first emotion beyond cold professionalism anyone had seen from her. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Harrison gripped her shoulder gently. "You were being family, and you always will be." The room erupted in applause. The SEAL team surrounded them both, and for the first time since the mission began, they allowed themselves to feel joy instead of just relief. 3 weeks later, Chen stood on a mountain ridge overlooking the Hindu Kush. Her injuries had healed enough for light duty, and she'd returned to her solitary sniper operations. But something had changed. The mountains didn't feel as lonely anymore. Her encrypted radio crackled. "Ghost, this is Viper 6, just checking in. How's the neighborhood?" Chen smiled. Davis called every day now just to make sure she was safe. "Neighborhood's quiet, Viper 6. How's the commander?" "Ornery as hell. Physical therapy's kicking his ass, but doctors say he'll make a full recovery. He'll be back to operational status in 6 months." "Good." Chen adjusted her scope, scanning the valley below. "Tell him I'm keeping his mountains safe until he gets back." "Will do." "And Ghost, we're planning a team barbecue next month. You're coming. That's not a request." "Since when do Marines take orders from Navy?" Davis laughed. "Since one particular Marine became an honorary member of SEAL Team 7. You're stuck with us now, Ghost. Families forever." Chen signed off and returned to her vigil. Below, a Taliban convoy moved through the valley, unaware they were being watched. She calculated range, wind, and trajectory with practiced ease. But before she could decide whether to engage, her radio crackled again. This time it was Harrison's voice, still rough but getting stronger. "Ghost, I hear you're back in my mountains." "Someone has to keep them safe, Commander." "Just remember, you don't have to do it alone anymore. You've got backup now, always." Chen looked at the Taliban convoy through her scope, then at the radio in her hand. For 20 years she'd been a ghost, invisible, isolated, alone. That's what had kept her alive, what had made her legendary. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to be something more than a ghost. "Copy that, Hawk 1, she said softly. "Good to know." As the sun set over the Hindu Kush Mountains, painting the peaks in gold and crimson, Captain Sarah "Ghost" Chen settled into her position. The Taliban convoy continued through the valley, and her finger rested lightly on the trigger. But this time she wasn't alone. Somewhere behind her, watching her back, were 7 brothers who would never leave her behind. A commander who understood sacrifice. A family forged in fire and blood. The legend of Ghost had been about isolation and fear. The legend of Ghost moving forward would be about something far more powerful: loyalty, honor, and the unbreakable bonds of warriors who refuse to abandon each other, no matter the cost. She keyed her radio one last time. "All stations, this is Ghost. I have eyes on target, maintaining overwatch, always watching, always protecting." And in the gathering darkness, surrounded by mountains that had seen centuries of war, Sarah Chen finally understood what it meant to truly come home. The end.